Testing 1, 2. What's going on? Good morning. Just waiting on YouTube, and we're live. So, what's going on, guys? Donnie Rouse here, and I just finished my espresso shot, and it was a great shot. So, whenever I have a great shot of espresso early morning, it is always the start of a good day. So, this one is called Permission to Soar. Hi, guys. My name is Donnie Rouse, and you are listening to the podcast One Life. Permission to Soar. If you are living, there's no doubt that you're going to experience some kind of hardship in your life at some point, right? Hardship is another word to experience pain. Whether or not that pain is pervasive, meaning whether or not that pain leads to suffering, it all depends on the meaning that you're going to give that event and that's unfolding in your or that happened in your life. So anything trauma is it's kind of like a byproduct of living. Like whenever we hear the word trauma, we tend to think of these huge events that are catastrophic in the sense that, they are these life-changing events. But in essence, trauma really doesn't have to be that big. Trauma could be something very small as well, as maybe when you were younger and an adult yells at you in a certain way or snaps at you. Now all of a sudden that trauma may be living inside of you for your entire life until you recognize it, until you acknowledge it and see that you could respond a different way. The podcast today is about one experience I had this past weekend, seeing an old friend of mine and an experience that he had with someone that he loved that ended up getting married and with somebody else. And it's about the meaning that he applied to the situation and how he was being extra hard on himself. And this guy is awesome. Because I'm friends with awesome people, so I can attest to that. And I know him, so he is a big teddy bear with like a heart of gold. But I know that he is not that much different than all of us, right? Because we tend to hold on to things that happen in our life, and they tend to trickle forward. And as a result, we're living in the past, and that's preventing you from living your best life, from living the future, from experiencing more out of it. So in this podcast, we'll briefly touch about meaning. What does it mean to, how do you apply a new meaning to events that have happened in your life? But more importantly, the fresh perspective to getting outside of your day-to-day world. Because it's so easy to fall in this trap of thinking, well, this is how things are. Things are not going to get better. Whatever it is that happened is pervasive. And you literally cycle in this feeling of suffering. But it doesn't have to be that way. But it comes with asking some new questions. The first thing is, what is the event, right? What is the problem, the event, whatever you want to call it? Secondly, what is the meaning that you're applying to it? Like, because this happened, what does it mean? Thirdly, what else could it mean? We don't experience life from the outside in, we experience from the inside out. So when we change the meaning, we change the entire event. And then lastly, or second to last, is how have you been living your life? Like, what has been your day-to-day? Are you living in this cycle? It seems like you're in a Groundhog Day. Or are you constantly meeting new people, having new experiences? And then lastly, how can you add a little bit more fresh perspective if I'm assuming that around this, whatever this event is, likely you have been kind of cycling through the same habits, the same patterns. And by shifting that and experiencing something new, you could have new experiences, maybe even a new perspective. So I was at the bar and I was sitting with my friend. He came up to me and said, hey, I was listening to some of your podcast. And then he went on to, I hadn't seen him in years. And he went on to tell me about an experience that he had where he had loved this girl. And they would spend a lot of time together, and he really, really did pour himself out to her, as everyone who loves someone it wants to do. That's one of the most beautiful things about love, right? You're not thinking of yourself. You're thinking of the other person. As a result, you're willing to give that energy to the person that you love. This girl ended up going on to meet another guy and eventually got married. So my friend, he was living through the past, cycling through these memories, beating himself up because he did certain things that he felt like maybe it was too much. Maybe he shouldn't have helped her at school with an exam or something like that. And it's funny because I look at back then, right? I had experiences in my I would say my youth, looking back at college, but I'm not holding on to these things, right? So I'm like, well, what is making him hold on to these experiences, these actions that he took? And as he was going through this, I was just kind of asking him different questions just to see what his perspective was. And one of those questions was, have you traveled? And I'm not saying that this is all about travel, because it was more of a question of, are you just getting out? Are you having different experiences? Are you getting new perspectives? It's so easy to think, especially in the case of love, but love is a metaphor for your life, right? It could be love. It could be your job. It could be anything. It's just saying, are you getting new perspectives to see that there's a bigger world out there? One of the things that I tend to cycle in, I notice myself, is I will see someone that I like, and if I, attempt to approach them, or sometimes I don't even approach them. Sometimes I'm like, it's just in my mind. And I'm like, oh, well, they may be with someone. Oh, God, there's no one out there. But I know that that's not true, but yet my focus tends to go that way sometimes, because I've been out in the world, and I realize that there's so many people, so many fish in the sea. But when I have this limited perspective that this is all there is, like the town of Stanford, the people that I experience at maybe one place that I frequent all the time, that this is all there is, that, oh my God, I can't find anyone, I'll be alone. Or you make up shitty meanings like that. So I was asking him about just being able to get out, and he expressed some frustration in that. He had traveled to, I think, Salt Lake City, but he was just sharing with me how, every day, the days do feel like they're kind of repetitive. Do you ever feel that? Do you ever feel like that, maybe with your work, your job, in your relationship? One of the things I want to call to your attention here is that there are no problems, right? Problems are just another question being asked. It's another advancement for you to start to see things a little bit differently, for you to take action, for you to grow. So when I was talking with him, I wanted to see, well, what was his, what lens was he viewing his life? Because I look at what he was doing. I said, well, no, that's how he was expressing his love for this person was actually very beautiful. And you never lose anything by loving, by expressing and showing love. But when you retract it and when you hold it in, that is actually when you lose. I will say that because I've been guilty of that, where I would hold back. I was in a relationship once where I loved the person, but it didn't feel right, so we broke off, and I had this retraction, like being very self-critical. And as a result of that, not feeling worthy enough, I wasn't expressing the love how I did even in that relationship that I ended. So I was trying to help him understand, what you're doing is actually beautiful. And if you were to learn just one thing, like the fact that, one, you're able to love, two, we're all able to love, but two, to know what it feels like to be in love, to have those feelings for someone, that alone is worth the entire experience. Because now you're not wasting time going into these things that aren't going to fulfill you, that aren't going to grow. Let's go look at it from the perspective of a job. Same thing, right? There are certain things where you experience and you just have this immense passion for it, right? This sense of excitement. But then you might use something that literally you're boredom, mundane, and that's well, this doesn't feel right. So I wanted them to get just a sense to say, well, yeah, you know what? From this experience, I learned something, and because I learned this, it's going to help me on the path forward. And the next person I get into a relationship with, well, you know what? She is going to be one lucky girl. We are going to be lucky together, but I will know how to express that love more fully. Going back to this perspective, when you get a fresh perspective, again, you see things for how they really are, expansive. Like, it's so easy to think that the day-to-day lives that we live, that's all there is in life. And it's just not true. There's many ways to living, many different people, many ways of being happy, right? You can be here, and I am, first of all, I am guilty of this because I'll find myself applying a standard or a rule saying, well, my life is not like this, therefore it must not be good. Because I'm looking around and you see everyone responding a certain way or living a certain way, and you tend to end up in this idea of group think. But when I take the step out, when I give myself that time to experience and get a larger perspective on life, I realize that I'm the luckiest person in the world, that I love my life. I love what I get to do. But it's so easy to lose track of that. So this podcast, this session right here, I want to invite you to get into a deeper relationship with yourself, to get a different perspective, where any category of your life, anywhere where you feel like there's a struggle, to start to step beyond and see something greater, see something more expansive. Maybe it's going to the gym. Maybe you hate going to the gym. You're like, oh, fuck, I hate going to the gym. So annoying. I hate all the people. It's always crowded. But you don't have to necessarily go to the gym. What if you enjoy playing tennis? Maybe you join a meetup group with tennis. Now, all of a sudden, you're engaging with different people. You have more social interactions. And now fitness becomes fun. So again, bringing it back, the point of this is to reframe, and we'll go through those questions I asked you earlier, just to see, like, all right, what is it that you're experiencing? How can you reframe it? Because literally the meaning of anything in life is only the meaning that you give it. Whether it's the end or the beginning is based on the meaning that you've provided. But more importantly than that, I want you to just get perspective, to step outside of the figure eight, the cycle that you step in and day out. Because when you get that perspective, that's when you start to see that life, your day is full of possibility. That anything is possible. But sometimes you need to step away from the day-to-day, the hypnosis of life. Sometimes you need to step away from the influence of these people around you that tell you that you should do things a certain way. So this way you can decide for yourself. You can do an internal check to say, well, what is it that I really want? How do I really want to live my life? Let's go back to those questions now, right? One, what is the problem? Like, what is it that you're experiencing? What is the struggle? Number two, what is the meaning that you apply to this event? Third, what else could it mean? I mean, here's are just a few questions that you could ask. You could say, well, what virtue is trying to make its way through me? What am I supposed to learn from this that will better me in the future? How can I grow from this experience? They're all similar questions, but they're looking at the event for something greater that you could bring into your life. It's looking for growth, and it's saying that whatever happened is happening for you. And then third, how have you been living, right? If you think of the area of your life or your life as a whole, what are the days, what's the day in, day out kind of thing? Is it this do you feel like you're in a Groundhog Day? And then lastly, what can you do to break that mold, to step outside of that loop? Because life, it happens outside of your comfort zone. Life happens when you say yes to all the things around you. Not everything around you, but you know what I mean. New experiences. So I hope you enjoyed this podcast. If you did, I consider subscribing if you want to hear more of what I have to say here. I'm going to be doing some YouTube stuff as well. But nevertheless, I appreciate you being here. If there's a topic that you want to hear more about, whether it be travel, whether it be just mindset stuff, feel free to send me a message through my website at www.donnierouse.com, www.donnierouse.com. That's all I've got for you guys today. I hope you enjoy this. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoy this. I hope it gives a spark to just say, you know what? Life doesn't have to be this way. Let me try something different. Because you're worth it. Your life is worth it. Remember, you only get one life. Live it. God bless, and I will see you.